There he is. We have 2 little boys.
I want the best for the kids as they grow up.
Parents are telling us that the number one savings goal that they have is for college.
We have 2 529 accounts for both boys.
I was surprised by the flexibility of a 529.
529s are not just for college anymore.
34.
Why is education important to you?
I think education is sort of that investment in the future. We've decided to at least get started because there's a long way to go. Bye-bye.
Room, board, tuition fees, college doesn't come cheap. And figuring out how to pay for it can get stressful. But hopefully this conversation can help. Hi, welcome to Money Unscripted, a podcast from Fidelity Investments. I'm Ally Donnelly. Today, we're talking about 529 accounts, a tax-advantaged way to save for education expenses. How do they work? When's a good time to start saving? And what happens to your money if your child doesn't go to college? Don't worry, there are options. But before we explore those, let me introduce you to Taylor and Samir, 2 working parents with 2 young boys. They want the best for their kids, and for them, that includes money to help pay for their education, even if they don't know exactly what the future holds.
High five. Good job. I had 2 little boys, 2 careers, a dog, a house, so the days are full. I couldn't actually tell you what happens.
Think of it as organized chaos. It's chaos, but there's 2 of us, and obviously that makes it easier.
What are we making here? Zane is 5 and Reed is 2. They're a ton of energy.
You're raising a young family. It's expensive.
So you want to help me make a garage again, bud?
Talk to me about the costs you're juggling.
They're the obvious costs, right? They're the diapers. There's the food for 2 boys, which is adding up quick.
Daycare cost, mortgage.
There's costs of preschool. There's after school.
Car payments, student loans. You still have to have some type of quality of life.
Just it's a lot.
Where's the?
I'm also trying to save for when the boys go to college, which feels really far away.
What do you want for them as they grow up?
We want to give them options, right? Options to do what they want, to lead a life they want.
They can go to school. They can go to trade school. But ultimately, for them to be happy, fulfilled in what they choose to do.
Both Taylor and Samir are grateful for their own upbringing and the example set by their parents.
I immigrated with my parents from Morocco for better opportunities. And that opportunity for me was a college education.
I think I grew up in a loving home with a really strong work ethic, and that has sort of translated into how we think about planning. I think education is sort of that investment in the future.
When did you open a 529 for your first son?
So kind of embarrassing, but we opened 529 before we had kids, before we were pregnant, all the things. At the time, it made sense. And then the flip of it is our second child. I just opened his 529. So someday they'll watch this and probably not like that answer.
What was it for you that you felt you really needed to start early?
I think some part of us having been paying our own student loans month in and month out and sort of seeing all that interest that was sobering.
I want them to do better in the context of not thinking about those payments, just to set them up.
We're getting there.
The couple has made education goals part of their regular financial plan. They decided to automate their contributions to the boys' 529 plans and give their parents and other family opportunities to contribute at birthdays and holidays as well.
Obviously, we love toys, we love gifts, but there's just an excessive amount of things that we just obviously don't need.
Good day for the park.
How does it make you feel to have these plans started for your kids?
Relieved.
I don't know which way college is going. If we can't pay for all of it, that's fine. I don't think there's any shame in that. I just want to know that we tried.
There you are.
We're doing this for them to have choices, want them to have an education that gives them freedom to make whatever decision is going to make them happy.
Oh, thank you. I love you.
Young families like theirs have so much going on, it can be hard to prioritize that savings. So let me bring in Cory Latham. He's a managing director here at Fidelity, and he's going to go through all things 529 for us. Cory, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me here today.
You know, with the cost of college and everything going on with the student debt crisis, What do we know about where college is falling in the list of families' priorities?
I agree. There's a lot of priorities that families have, young families, all families. And what we're actually hearing is that it's the top priority. So based on our 2024 college savings indicator study that we did at Fidelity, parents are telling us that the number one savings goal that they have is for college. And while the study found that 74% of parents are already saving for their children's education, families are only on track to cover about 30% of anticipated college costs.
All right, to that end, let's start with the basics. What is a 529 and who can open one?
Yeah, so a 529 plan, it's a tax advantage account that can be utilized to pay for qualified higher education expenses. And any earnings in that account, they grow federally tax deferred. And if they are utilized for a qualified education expense, the distributions in that account are going to be federally tax free. So it's a good benefit if you're going to be using it for one of those expenses that would be deemed as qualified. And then you asked me who can open it up. Like typically you're going to see a parent opening it up on behalf of a child, but anybody really can. So you could have a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, anybody who wants to open up that account is eligible to do it on behalf of that beneficiary.
It's an investment account. So why would I want to consider a 529 over or in addition to a brokerage account?
Yeah, the biggest benefits you're going to get out of that 529 is that tax deferred growth and the tax-free withdrawals as long as it's utilized for that qualified expense. So it's good to know, and I know we'll touch on it, is like what those expenses are. So you see that it's very broad, where there are benefits to a brokerage account, but you really want to take advantage of that tax deferred growth and the tax-free withdrawals if you do want to use it for those higher education expenses.
You mentioned those qualified education expenses. I was actually really surprised about the flexibility of how much it can pay for. So run me through those.
Yeah, it's not just for college anymore. And I think a lot of folks, when you think about 529, you'll hear us say college, but it's a lot broader than that. I will start with some of the college expenses. That is probably the most typical one though. So you have things like college tuition and fees, room and board, books, computers, supplies, those types of things. Other typical ones you might not know about is off-campus housing or off-campus meal plans. All of those would qualify, but there's other benefits to the distributions that you can take advantage of. So one of them is for K through 12, you can use up to $10,000 per year on a tuition. For a student loan, you can use up to $10,000 towards that student loan payment, but that's over the lifetime of it. And another big one that's kind of played a bigger role when it comes to 529s recently is trade schools and apprenticeship programs. So there's a big need out there for people in the trades and for those folks that would benefit from an apprenticeship program. And that's what we've seen with 529s, that as the workforce has changed, and really as the college journey has changed for a lot of folks, it's not just after college 4 years and you're done. These plans have become a lot broader in what they can be used for so that they're actually meeting the needs of the beneficiary that they're set up for.
And I know you talked about trade schools, but does it have to be a traditional 4-year institution?
It does not. So you can look at things such as a community college, if you're just going to take a class at a time. There's all kinds of different ways it can be used. You want to make sure that before you're signing up for it, if you want to use it with your 529 plan, you just want to make sure that that certain program or class would qualify.
Okay. I want to stay with the flexibility for a second, because not every kid wants to go to college or is going to go to college. So if I've saved up that money in my 529 account and my child doesn't go or perhaps gets a scholarship or something like that, do I lose that money?
You don't. And I think we all hope that our kid is the one who gets that nice scholarship package and is able to go to school with it. I know that that's our dream, but we know that, hope is not a strategy. But there are other ways that it can be utilized. So say that they get a full scholarship or they try to go to the military, then there are advantages where you'd be able to take that money out and not have to pay a penalty on it.
Okay.
The two most common ones right now that we think about though are the ability to change a beneficiary or the ability to transfer it to a Roth IRA. So the changing of a beneficiary, you would think about it as if I have multiple children and I have multiple 529 accounts set up for them. Say my first child goes to school, doesn't use it. Well, I can change the beneficiary of that first account to the other child or one of the other children, and that can be used for their higher education expenses.
Okay.
So that's one of the bigger benefits that's been in place that you see parents utilizing.
Let me bump in there for a second. Even if I already have a 529 account established for that second child, I can move that money into it.
Yeah, there are no limits to the amount of 529s you could have. So typically, you could say a grandparent or an aunt and uncle could have one, as well as a parent could have one.
Okay.
So you absolutely can do that. Yep.
All right. Now let's go back to the Roth.
There's also the option now of transferring it into a Roth IRA. It does have certain conditions that need to be met. So the first thing is The account has to be open for 15 years in the name of the beneficiary. It's a maximum of $35,000 for the lifetime. Any contributions made to the Roth have to stay within the maximum limit of that year. So you can't do all 35,000 at once.
Okay.
And any contributions made to the 529 within the last 5 years, those would be ineligible to be transferred over to the Roth IRA.
Okay.
So-
All right. So what if I have that 529 account established and I've got money in there, but I need it. I need the money and I want to take it out. What happens then?
Yeah, you can always take it out. So there's nothing that's saying that it has to stay in there. But if you do, you would be subject to a 10% penalty if it's something for non-qualified.
Mhm.
And you also could be subject to any taxes that would be due on the earnings within that account.
Okay. Again, a 529 account is one vehicle.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking at financial aid, how does having a 529 account or the amount of money in it affect financial aid?
Yeah, this question comes up all the time. I
Yeah.
think federal aid can be a confusing process for a lot of individuals. I know they're trying to make it a lot easier, but there's a lot that goes into it. The easiest way to think about 529 when it comes to any financial aid is that it's considered a parental asset.
Mhm.
And currently, right now, the way that financial aid is set up at the federal level is that would count towards 5.6% towards the financial aid package.
Okay.
You compare that to what a student-owned asset would be, and that's about 20%. So it does have an impact on it. It's just not what we'd consider to be a large impact on it.
Okay. When you say student asset, that might be if my kid had a job and they
Correct.
got money in the bank.
Yep.
That impacts it by
Yeah,
20%.
exactly. Doing all those things we want them to do as they're getting ready to join the work during the real world. But yeah, any money that's in their name, that would be qualified as a student asset.
Okay. What if a grandparent, what if my mom opens an account for my kids and financial aid looks at that, or do they look at that? How does that impact it?
Yeah. So currently, right now, the way it's set up is grandparent-owned 529s do not count towards federal aid. So what that would mean is
Okay.
that any money for that beneficiary in a 529 account opened by that grandparent would not have impact. I do just want to say that's how it's set up for right now. That doesn't mean that's how it's always going
Yeah,
to be. And
yeah.
you always want to make sure that whenever you're opening up an account or looking at what you want your financial picture to be, make sure you're doing it thoughtfully. And if you want to talk to a tax professional or a financial professional, it's always going to help put you in the best position to make the right decisions for you in your own situation.
You mentioned earlier this is an investment account. As I'm opening, how do I make sure I'm choosing the right 529 account for me?
Yeah. So one of the first things I would talk about people is you should take a look at the plan that your state offers. So every state offers a plan, and each of those plans can have different characteristics, such as like a state tax deduction or a state tax credit. So you always want to make sure you're looking at the plan that your state offers to see if some of those benefits would help you out. But you're not required to do that. So there are no residency requirements. So just because you live in one state doesn't mean you have to invest in that plan. You can invest in any other state's plan. And other things that you'd want to think about are the investment lineup, the fees, the products that they offer, the services that they offer. So again, there's a lot of factors that would come into play that you'd want to look at. Again, you would want to kind of start with that state-specific standpoint to see if you would get any additional benefits from that.
So I've picked my plan, but now as we talk about investment options, what's available to me?
Yeah, so each state has their own investment lineup that they choose. And most commonly what you're going to see is we call it an age-based portfolio. So it means that it's going to be a little bit more aggressive when you have a longer investment horizon, and then it will become more conservative as you get closer to needing to utilize it. So it kind of does all the work for you. That's typically the most common investment you'll see in a 529. There are other options, though, if you're someone who's more from a target risk standpoint. So you're thinking about more of conservative or aggressive in that standpoint. There are portfolios that way. And there's also ones that we have, such as like a money market or a stable value portfolio. You can invest in that. So there are a lot of options, and it's really set up for the individual investor to choose. And for a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever had an investment account, and that can be overwhelming. Don't let that be the barrier to entry to opening it up. There's a ton of resources for you to help understand it, but you do have to be invested in these accounts.
Do you see that? Do you see that
Yep.
as a barrier for some folks?
Yeah, I
How?
think the most common thing that we see when people are opening up accounts is they tend to stop when it comes to that investment piece. And I think it's just kind of nervousness. As I mentioned earlier, it's the first time they're investing. There are a ton of resources out there available to folks to help them understand what that's going to look like. So you want to take advantage of that, because since it does have to be invested, you don't really have the option. But just understanding it and learning a little bit more about it, it not only helps educate you when you're looking at these accounts, but also gives you like a broader financial picture so that if you do want to continue investing, it's kind of a nice first step into the investing world.
So let's take a look at the savings and how they can build up over time. Give me some numbers and show me.
Yeah. So what's helpful to do is you want to think about investments is that it's not about timing the market. It's about the amount of time you can have in the market.
Mhm. Okay.
And I think a lot of times people are thinking this has to be a massive amount. You can do something like $50 a month. If you assume a rate of return of around 4.5% in this hypothetical example, after 15 years, you could have around $12,800 in the account. So even when you're starting with that kind of smaller amount, it really does add up over time.
You know, I look at Taylor and Samir and a lot of other families, and they're in it, man. They got the boys running around. I was not there. I was literally trying to survive parenthood when I first had kids. So like, if I don't open a 529 account when they're babies or toddlers, is it still worth it for me?
Yeah, it's never too late to open up an account. We hear that a lot. It's like, hey, I already missed the boat.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't open up when they were a baby. So what's the point of me doing it right now?
Yeah.
I think what the key is that anything that you're saving in this account now is less that you're going to have to pay later. You might not get that compounded growth that you got from opening up earlier, but there are still those tax advantages that come with a 529 account because you will still get the tax deferred growth in the account and the tax-free withdrawals as long as it's utilized for that qualified expense.
What about gifting to a 529? Give me the lowdown here.
Yeah, you're speaking to my heart right here. I think gifting is one of the best things that you can do. So you are able to gift to 529 accounts. I have 3 boys, so my favorite gift that they get every year is a gift to their education. It might not be for the younger ones right now, but as they get closer to that college age, I think they'll appreciate it as much as I do. The gift of a college education is about as good as you can give.
We packed so much information into this conversation, but I want to go through some kind of key takeaways. What do you hope people leave with?
Yeah, so I know it can feel overwhelming, right? College is expensive. It's one of the largest expenses that people have. But just think about anything that you're saving now is less that you're going to have to pay later. So just getting started and doing that is important. Another thing is you want to try to get invested as early as you can, right? The longer time you have in the market, the better. But also, mentioned earlier, just because you haven't started, don't let that prevent you from doing it.
Right.
We mentioned earlier, there's tax advantages to having it. And that's a great way to save for those qualified education expenses. And 529s are not just for college anymore. So you can use it for things such as trade schools, apprenticeship programs, things like that. Or even if you don't use it for any of that, we mentioned there's the ability to change the beneficiary for it or even look at that Roth transfer that we talked about earlier. And the last thing that I would tell people, and I'm sure that this has been said on this podcast many times, have a plan. So those that have a plan have a much higher likelihood of meeting the goal that they have set up. And I'll also throw in talking to your kids about it, helping them understand what the paying for school journey is going to look like. If you talk to your child about it, you have an even higher likelihood of meeting those goals. So have that family conversation. You'll put yourself in a much better position.
Family conversations have a plan. Cory Latham, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have more 529 resources on our website. It's fidelity.com/money unscripted. And drop a comment below to let us know what topics you want us to cover. Maybe it'll be a future episode. We'll see you next time here on Money Unscripted. It's your life. Get your money's worth. HSAs and the triple tax advantage.
It's the only thing like this.
Health savings accounts.
It's designed for now and the future.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger HSA cheerleader than you.
That's true. I love the HSA.
Today we're talking HSAs. With healthcare costs on the rise, health savings accounts can be a powerful tool to help you save for medical expenses both now and in retirement. Hi, I'm Ally Donnelly, and this is Money Unscripted, a podcast from Fidelity. We're talking life and money, jargon and judgment-free. So, HSAs, how do they work? How much can you save? And what is that triple tax advantage everyone keeps talking about? To walk us through the benefits and questions around these accounts, Amy Richardson is here. She's a Fidelity Vice President in Health and Benefit Accounts. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, there's a lot of jargon and acronyms when we talk about HSAs, and it can be like a little off-putting or maybe a little overwhelming. So first and foremost, just break it down. What is an HSA?
An HSA is a health savings account, which is something that you can use if you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan. And it is a tax advantaged way to save money for health expenses, both now and in retirement.
All right, tax advantage. I mean, I don't know anybody who wants to pay more taxes than they are required to. So, but what does that mean? Tax advantage, tax efficient. What is that?
This is the most amazing thing about an HSA is that it's the only investment vehicle where you can get triple tax advantages. So you put money into your HSA before taxes, like a 401k, and then the money will grow tax deferred. And as long as you use it for qualified medical expenses, you don't pay any taxes on it when you take the money out.
Flexible spending accounts, FSAs versus HSAs. What's the difference between an FSA, flexible spending account, and an HSA?
Yes, and it does get confusing, right? It's a lot of alphabet soup. Sounds about the same. An FSA is a flexible spending account, which means that you need to spend it by the end of that year in which you've contributed to it. An HSA is a health savings account. So it's designed to be saving beyond the year in which you're putting it in. So you can spend it, but then you can also save in that account. It's yours. It carries over from year to year. It's your account to take with you if you leave your employer, whereas your FSA is tied to that employer and that plan year.
All right. So FSA, use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it.
Okay. So you mentioned that you have to have a high deductible health plan to be eligible for an HSA. How do I know that my health plan is the right kind?
One way to be sure is to check with your insurance company. They can confirm that. You can also check with your employer. And when annual enrollment comes around, if you are not currently in a high deductible health plan, that's usually when you can make your elections for what health plan you want to change to for the next year. The high deductible makes you eligible to open up an HSA. And one of the things to consider at that point in time is what you're paying now when you factor in your premiums plus your copays. And when you enroll in your high deductible health plan, you'll pay lower premiums in exchange for the high deductible, but you can put that money tax advantaged into an HSA to cover that deductible and more.
Yeah, open enrollment. I feel like so many people I talk to, they're just overwhelmed by choices and make that decision quickly. You told me a great story or a great analogy.
So if you're going to purchase a car, you spend about 9 hours over 89 days researching that car decision. When someone elects their health benefits, they spend about 8 minutes, which is about the amount of time it takes to say the same as last year. This is really your time to be looking at the overall math, the costs, the whole pieces of it, and see how it fits together, because you could be leaving, some opportunity on the table.
Yeah, and that's it, right? I mean, it's pretty stunning to think about spending that much time on a car and next to nothing on something that could have a huge impact.
And you're going to spend the same amount every month, probably on both of them, either way.
We talked about investing. So is the money I have in my HSA automatically invested? What, do I have to do something?
It is not automatically invested, mainly because you'll want to choose your own investments depending on a number of different factors. But also you may need to be spending some of the money in there. So you might not want to invest it all. So it's going to come into a core position, and then you can set up automatic investments so that it will go into the automatic investments every time it arrives in the account. The other thing too is that you can set a cash target so that you always have enough to cover maybe an emergency room visit, or maybe your deductible, the full deductible amount, and then invest on top of that if it's something that you might not want to pay out of pocket and you want to use your HSA to spend.
What do you mean cash target?
So I could say that I want to make sure I always have $500 available, because the last time I left an emergency room, they said I had to pay $475. So I could leave that amount in there, or I could say, well, my deductible for my family is, say, $3,000. I want $3,000 in cash, so I know that I have that for the deductible this year, but everything I contribute on top of that, I want it invested.
So what difference have you seen for people who invest their HSA money and people who don't?
Yes. So because you get to benefit from the compounded growth, we tend to see account balances 7 times higher for those who are investing in their HSA.
Wow. Okay. That's no small thing.
No, not at all.
I still feel like even though HSAs have been around, right? I still feel like a lot of people I talk to don't know so much about it, or they don't have one, or they don't know if they have one. So can I only get an HSA through my employer?
No, you do not have to get your HSA through your employer. You can actually open up an HSA at Fidelity, at another financial institution, at your local bank. Your employer may have an affiliation with a financial company, and you would want to look into that because they may also contribute some money to your HSA. But you can hold an HSA in multiple places as long as you don't over contribute to it based on the maximums for that year.
So I can't, if my limit is X, I can't put more than that in these multiple accounts.
Correct.
And what about the tie to the health plan? Does it still have to be high deductible?
You always have to have a high deductible health plan to open up an HSA.
Okay.
If you no longer had a high deductible health plan, the HSA can remain open. You just cannot contribute to it while you're not enrolled in a high deductible health plan.
Okay. So let's say I get my HSA through my employer, right? And then I get laid off, or I take a new job and that doesn't offer an HSA. What do I do?
So that HSA is yours to keep.
Okay.
And so you can leave it through the financial institution that you opened it with your employer. You can also transfer it or roll it over to another HSA at a different financial institution. There's no tax consequences for that. You can also spend it down on qualified medical expenses or invest it all for the future.
Okay. And if my new employer doesn't have the high deductible plan, do I lose the money there?
Nope, it's still yours to keep. It's your account.
It follows you wherever.
It does.
Let's talk turkey. How much can you contribute to an HSA every year?
Someone enrolled in individual coverage in a high deductible health plan can contribute $4,150. And family coverage in a high deductible health plan is $8,300 for this year.
Okay. So for 2024, what about folks who are a little older?
There are catch-up contributions available. It's $1,000 if you're over age 55. And if it's a family plan, that is $1,000 for the employee and also their spouse.
Okay. So that's how much I can save, right? Is there a number that I should be targeting, so to speak? I know everyone's situation is different.
It is. I mean, the answer to that always is that it depends. And really, you should be thinking about your HSA as part of your overall investment strategy. We kind of like to think of it as a retirement plan twin, that it's something you're already saving for retirement, but really saving for medical expenses in retirement is important as well. So I would say as much as you can save is what you'd want to save, but really you're getting the tax advantage by doing anything with your HSA. So if you put the money in on a pre-tax basis and you spend it that year, you're going to spend it anyway. So you might as well get the tax advantage by putting it in the HSA. If you end up not spending it all, it's going to carry over to the next year, and you can invest that amount that you carried over to the next year as you contribute the amount that you think you need for this year. We do have a calculator on fidelity.com that would let you look through some of these things.
Okay.
I also encourage you to think about the premiums and the difference in premiums that you'd be paying on a high deductible health plan, which is going to have a lower premium most of the time than another type of health plan. And if you put the difference into your HSA, then you'd also have a way to save that way.
So you just mentioned healthcare costs in retirement. And I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like getting to know the numbers. So talk to me about those numbers, and then how can a HSA help?
Right now, Americans think that a married couple will spend $41,000 on medical expenses in retirement. In actuality, an individual can expect to spend $157,500 in retirement on medical expenses, and a married couple $315,000. So yes, we
That
do want to
hurts.
save.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to save early. We want to save often. And so the way that an HSA can help is that you're putting this money aside in a tax advantaged way. That growth is going to be compounded. You're saving in it the same way that you'd be saving in a retirement plan, except this is for medical expenses. And if you need it for medical expenses along the way, you have access to it. When you turn 65, it basically converts to a type of IRA or 401k if you don't need to spend it on medical expenses. Now, I just told you how much you're probably going to need on medical expenses.
Right.
So chances are you'll need it for medical expenses. But if you don't, then it just works like a retirement plan, meaning that you would pay ordinary income tax on what you take out of that account.
So if I use it for something non-medical related, no problem if I'm 65 plus, but I'll pay tax.
Correct.
Okay. Hit me with that early again, because I feel like there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas that as you age, you see. Talk to my 30-year-old self, will you?
Well, remember when you first started working, people talked about a 401k and you could not even think about saving for retirement, but someone, said you have to do it. And so you started doing it and you saw it grow. It's the same thing with the HSA is once you start putting it in there, you're going to not miss it from your paycheck anymore. You get used to that. And then if you invest it, you can have that compounded growth. Start early, save it up in there, spend what you need to. And that's the other great thing about it is you can access it.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to take a hardship for medical expenses from your 401k where you'd have to pay taxes and a penalty. You could use your HSA money to cover anything that you need for medical expenses and then continue saving the rest.
I was really surprised to hear some of the things you could use an HSA for. I think FSA, I think my contact solution and glasses and dentists and stuff like that. But there's more and interesting things you can pay for with an HSA.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some things that you may not think about are if you needed to make modifications to your home for, say, a ramp for a wheelchair or travel expenses to go stay if you need to get care out of town somewhere. So a number of different things, even if you have a child with special education needs, a tutor to learn Braille, for example, can be covered with an HSA. So a number of different things, plus the other qualified medical expenses that you might expect.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so long as you're using them on those qualified medical expenses, you're not paying for taxes.
Correct. The other thing too is that you can reimburse yourself from your HSA back in time for any expenses that you that you spent on medical since you opened the HSA. So for example, if I pay out of pocket for my prescriptions right now, I might want to save my receipts so that in the future I can reimburse myself for that money.
This is so funny. We just had this conversation yesterday with our videographer, Jim, and he was saying that his wife went back 2 years and got receipts, but there are some parameters around that, right?
Correct. It has to be after you enrolled in the high deductible health plan and after you open the HSA. So you're reimbursing yourself for things that you could have used your HSA for at that point in time, but you chose not to because you left it in the plan. You can reimburse yourself back to that point in time.
Okay. So long as you had the HSA account established when you spent that money. So what happens if there's money left in this account and I pass away?
That's actually also an it depends question. So you can and absolutely should set up a beneficiary on your HSA and on all accounts that you have, make it easier for people later on. But if you are leaving your HSA to a spouse, then the spouse will receive the HSA in the same form as an HSA. They'd be able to use it the same way.
Okay.
If you're leaving it to a non-spouse, then it is taxable to that person, but they can receive the funds that are in the HSA. And if you don't name a beneficiary, then it becomes part of your final tax return.
We talked about the investment opportunity, right? The money compounding. But as I'm thinking about my HSA, should I be spending some money out of that every year, or should I just try and save it for later at all costs? Or not all costs, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. And the answer to that is it depends. And really, it's probably a combination of things because there are things you may need to spend it on to cover things right now. And then if you can save it and you don't have as many medical expenses in a year, then you could save and invest that amount. Most people do use it like a spectrum. You usually have a debit card that you can use for spending for right now, and then you have all of these opportunities to save. What I would say is you can think creatively with the HSA too. So say if someone said, I just don't have it in my budget right now to save for my HSA, when you receive a medical bill for a high deductible health plan expense, you could put the money in the HSA and then pay your bill from the HSA. So at least you get one out of the three tax advantages there. So you can use this account to your advantage for whatever you need to use it for.
Do I need an advisor to set up an HSA for me?
I think an advisor would certainly be able to assist in looking at your entire financial profile and where the HSA would fit into that.
Mhm.
That may even help with how you invest in the HSA versus how you invest in a different type of an account in case you do plan to spend some of it now versus save it all for the future.
Mhm.
But you can open up an HSA on your own as well. And then there are usually tools to help you decide how you invest it, how much to leave in cash, the calculator we talked about earlier, plus investing tools and managed accounts too, where the investments are chosen for you.
Okay. All right. So I've listened to this.
Mhm.
I've watched this. I'm in. I want to open an HSA. What do I do?
Super easy to do. So very first thing, just as a reminder, you do have to be enrolled in an HSA eligible plan,
Yep.
which is a high deductible health plan. Once you do that, you can go check with your employer if they have one established. So you could open up through your employer with the relationship that they may have with a financial institution, or you can go to any financial institution and open up an HSA. It's as simple as just opening up an account.
Okay.
And then you can start contributing to it right away.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger HSA cheerleader than you.
That's true. It is the only triple tax advantaged vehicle.
Hit me one more time with the triple tax advantage.
So you put money in on a pre-tax basis. So you're not paying taxes on the money that you put into the HSA. Anything you spend it on, as long as it's a qualified medical expense, you do not pay taxes on. And you can invest it for future growth. And all of that growth is not going to be taxed as well.
And you don't lose it.
It is yours to keep. No use it or lose it like an FSA. It's designed to be for now and the future.
Awesome. Amy, this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love talking about HSAs.
Thanks to Amy and thanks to all of you for being here. If you're looking for more information on HSAs, including that calculator tool that we talked about, head to our website. It's fidelity.com/money unscripted. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, share the podcast, and we'll see you next time here on Money Unscripted. It's your life. Get your money's worth.
Anyone should do estate planning. It doesn't matter what your net worth is. What do we need? You need the core 4 documents.
Let's talk about it. Taxes.
Death and taxes, the only 2 certainties in life, right?
Exactly.
Tell us why it's important to have everything in order.
It's about protecting yourself, your family, and your legacy.
It's such an important but sometimes tough topic. So we're here to help with creating your estate plan. We're covering how to get started, what documents you need, and ways to approach those family conversations. Hi, welcome to Money Unscripted, a podcast from Fidelity Investments. I'm Ally Donnelly. I want to introduce Pamela Perrone Benson. She's a vice president in advanced planning here at Fidelity and is going to give us the tools we need to build a solid estate plan. Pamela, welcome.
So great to be here, Ally. Thanks for having me.
You know, a lot of people put off estate planning. Help us understand the why behind that and then how you encourage people who are hesitant to get started.
Sure. It's really, no one really wants to think about their death or talk about their death, but such an important conversation to have. You're going to get to control your own legacy, your own destiny. And you really also want to think about not only death, but incapacitation, right? If you're sick, you want to have a plan in place for somebody to step in and help you.
You know, you hear the word or the phrase estate plan, and I think, well, I don't have an estate. I just have stuff, so what is an estate plan?
It's good to kind of break it down that it's so much more than wealth. Anyone should do estate planning. It doesn't matter what your net worth is because it becomes about you making the decisions instead of somebody making them for you, right? Choosing a guardian for your children, asking somebody to step in if you were incapacitated. You don't want the state to do that. You want to be able to do that. And having that estate plan in place right? It's more than just putting a beneficiary, but having a good plan in place is going to get you there.
And, whether it's for your plan or your parents' plan,
Yeah,
you're helping
it's
them, obviously these can be tough conversations, but like you alluded to, not having them can be worse. So
Yeah.
tell us why it's important to have everything in order.
Well, you want to be organized, right? That's important. And the reason you want to be organized is because if somebody has to step in and help you, you don't want it to be hard for them. The emotional piece is a lot, right? It's already enough dealing with somebody that you love that's sick or has passed away. Then on top of it, to have to play Sherlock Holmes, to have to look for all of the documents, that's a mess and an added stress.
You talk about your parents.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that you say, well, your plan is only as good as people know where it is or what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me about your parents.
I mean, so my parents have had an open discussion about their estate plan, which I think is good, trying to bring us all together.
Yeah.
My father has everything organized. He's a little old school in the sense that he has a accordion folder where he has everything organized by title, has graph paper outlining what those accounts are and where to find them and who to call. But to me, that's invaluable, right? I want to be able to help them if I can.
Okay. So we've talked about the why. Let's talk about the how. Let's get into the mechanics of what are the steps I need to take to start an estate plan.
Sure. So we talked about getting organized. Next would be to start to formulate your decisions around having those basic documents in place. You need the core 4 documents. That's what we think about. You need a power of attorney for financial decisions, a healthcare proxy for medical decisions, a living will, those end of life wishes, and then your last will and testament.
Okay. So let's dig into those core 4. First one, power of attorney.
Yep. So that's a legal document. Generally, it's drafted by an attorney, and it's going to empower somebody or name an agent, they're called, to step into your shoes and pay your bills, run your life, make your financial decisions if you can't. Those power of attorneys can be immediate, where you sign them and somebody acts immediately, or they can spring into effect at a different time.
Okay. So your second one is a healthcare proxy. First, what is it? And then how's it different from the power of attorney?
Sure. So the healthcare proxy is going to deal with strictly medical. This is the person you're going to trust. If you can't make your own medical decisions, you're going to name somebody to step in for you. A lot of times hospitals will ask you to sign one, but it's always great to have your own healthcare proxy outlining who that person is and what your wishes are. Different from the power of attorney, as you asked, which is just finances, really.
So also related to those health and medical questions is the core 4 of a living will. What does that cover?
That living will is your end of life decisions, right? Now, that's really not the fun part of the conversation, right? In my experience, though, I once sat with a client who was dying and their children came and not all of them saw eye to eye, right? One wanted to be on machines, who wanted to take them off machines. That living will was so invaluable to bring the family together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of topics in the living will. Do you want to be buried or cremated? The newest trend is nursing home versus at home. Let people know what you want.
Okay. And you mentioned it briefly, but do I need to have an attorney for those 3 documents, the power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will?
So generally speaking, Fidelity feels that you should have an attorney draft those 3 documents along with your will. And a lot of times attorneys will give you the legal and tax advice and they'll package deal. They'll do the 4 documents together.
But if I don't have an attorney, must I have an attorney for those?
You might be able to do them yourself. If there's some states have forms online that you can use. Fidelity, for example, has our own Fidelity form. Again, though, you'd want to have an attorney to give you that legal advice on what's the best power of attorney for you.
Okay. So last will and testament. What is it?
So it's a legal document. You want to see your attorney to have it drafted, and it's going to have a couple of fiduciaries named in there. One being an executor, some states a personal representative. They're going to get the job to help settle the estate.
Okay.
If you have minor children, you're going to want to think about a guardian, somebody to take physical possession and care of your children. If your children, again, are minors or any beneficiaries that are minors, you're going to need a trustee, somebody to step in and help manage the money. It's also going to deal with your pets. It's going to deal with your stuff, those important things in your home, outlining where you want them to go. And then that will is going to help make that probate process easier.
Okay. So you say your stuff, but it's also your house, your accounts. Map that out.
Generally speaking, it's your house, your cars, your stuff. It could also be any brokerage accounts that don't have a beneficiary, checking, savings, even potentially life insurance.
Last thing, will and testament. Do you need a lawyer here?
Well, I think a lot of people, a lot of clients, all of us, do we want to draft our own legal documents, right?
Yeah.
So the will is a legal document. In some states, it's really important to be specific about, do you need one witness or two witnesses? Do you need notaries? Right? I could share a story. When my grandfather passed away, he had an older will. And I brought it to court, and I do this for a living, right? I brought it to court, and the surrogate said, no, we're not accepting this will. And I said, why? I said, well, there's something wrong with the witness. We can't prove her signature. So I had to track down this witness in the middle of New York. And I had to give her a fee to now validate the will because it wasn't done properly. A lot of times the attorney will help you have it executed properly so that it's valid.
And also with a will, there is a probate process. There's a court process, correct?
Process, yeah. That evil word probate. Everybody talks about probate, and it is a court process, right? So your will equals probate.
Okay.
It means somebody's got to take that will to court and start a probate process.
Okay. So that's a will. When or why might I need a trust?
If only there was an easy answer to that question. Do I need a trust? It's definitely fact and circumstance specific. But the number one reason that people set up trusts, certainly to avoid probate.
Meaning, if I have a will and I name all the things I want to go to people, there's still a process. There's still a delay after I die.
There is.
But if I put it in a trust,
we might be able to avoid that delay. We're going to have a successor trustee that can step in without going to court. And that's what we refer to as a revocable living trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also with the trust, right? It's more private.
Yep. We could avoid going through a public notice of everybody being put on notice. Maybe you're leaving some people in and excluding others. Maybe you have your favorite charities you're including, and you don't want somebody to be able to see who you left to. A revocable trust gets you privacy, as well as the ease of administration and the avoiding of probate.
A will is a public record.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Give me some examples of how people use trusts.
Yeah, so you got to think about if it's going to be a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. Generally speaking, people might have real estate, their house, right? They want to avoid probate. You could put anything non-retirement in a trust. Generally speaking, we usually see the house is something a lot of clients think about putting in a trust. But there's a lot of different reasons to use a trust. Maybe you have a special needs beneficiary. I had a client who has a health issue and their child has a health issue, and they're going to put some of their financial accounts and their home into the trust to help protect it.
Let's talk about it. Taxes.
Death and taxes, the only two certainties in life, right?
Exactly. So what do I need to know?
Well, we want to make sure that we understand, do you live in a state with a state estate tax? There are states that when you pass away, you're going to have to pay a state estate tax depending on who's receiving the asset.
Estate tax?
Estate tax.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there are states that impose a price to die. A client once said to me, I said, you're right, right? So you pay taxes during your life, you pass away, there's this price to die.
Yeah.
The estate tax. State estate tax as well as federal estate tax. Right now, that exclusion's pretty high, though. It's at $13.99 million. And if you're married, you get to double that. So almost $28 million free.
So how can proper planning help me reduce my estate taxes?
Yeah, you could start to think about gifting, right? If you give it away before you pass away, that's money won't be part of your estate. And on the other side of it, you get to see someone enjoy and use it now. Even if it's a person, maybe it's your favorite charity, you can gift tuition and medical directly to an institution. And then a lot of times there's irrevocable trust strategies that you can bring in where you're gifting to a trust to remove that asset from your estate.
Meaning it doesn't count in your grand total if it's in a trust.
In an irrevocable trust.
Got it. Okay.
But you always want to consult your attorney. Gifting can get very complicated. There's forms you might have to file. So please involve your accountant and your attorney.
So how often do I revisit my estate plan? Is it one and done?
No, I would say, you have to think about life events, circumstances, things change. People are born, people pass away, right? Different fiduciary capacities. We want to think about, is there a divorce, right? A remarriage. Also thinking about any other kind of health issue that might come about, maybe a change in your wealth, inheritance, right? You receive some money, changes in the law, but at a minimum, Fidelity, we feel that every 3 to 5 years minimum, dig them out. You got to be able to find them,
right?
And then be able to review them.
All right. So going into your dad's accordion folder, right?
Yeah. We have to find it, which I know where it is, and then digging it out.
Awesome. So earlier we talked about the why on the tough conversations. I want to dig into the how a little bit more. So again, like, I think I've said this to you before, like when I wanted to talk to my mom about estate planning, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be awful. This is going to be so painful. Blah, blah, blah. And she was ready to go.
Yeah.
So how do I start those conversations?
Well, I think a lot of times too, you're relieving the pressure on the person by bringing it up yourself.
Mm.
I think you first want to not throw it at somebody at an inconvenient time, right? Maybe having a comfortable environment. I have a client that tells me every year her family's together at Thanksgiving. That's when she brings up the death and tax conversation. And I'm thinking, rather just eat turkey at Thanksgiving. But for her, it's amazing because everybody's there. She tells them who to call and where to find things. So definitely kind of bringing everybody together, having the important players there that are going to have a job, right? That power of attorney, that executor, and approaching the topic. It's not easy, but it's one to have.
But it's also a money topic.
Yeah, it
And
is.
that can get thorny.
It can, but does it have to be a money topic surrounding dollars and cents? Probably not. Maybe the conversation is, I have assets in X, Y, Z. Call this person. You'll find the assets there.
And what about those assets? I mean, are we gauging the temperature on the assets? Like, Christopher, would you like the house? Elizabeth, would you like the car?
Who wants the tea set? Who wants the dog? Right? Who wants the vase? I strongly believe that if you can hedge those conversations up front, that will cause less controversy and stress on the back end. But it's also making a decision. Is it a voice versus a vote, right? Are you giving them a say or are you giving them a vote
right
to tell you what they want?
Yeah,
You have to drive what that conversation looks like.
And do you hear that from clients that, like, once they've had the conversations, that sense of relief?
Oh, all the time. A lot of times here at Fidelity too, we bring that next generation in. It's amazing so that they know, where we are, what we're doing, who to call, and bring the family together. It's great.
That next generation, what does that look like in a conversation?
Yeah. So a lot of times it's engaging that next generation. It's great if they can come to the table and have the conversation. Recently, as parents were talking to, I had clients, they were talking to the children who were at the meeting as well. And the children were talking about how important it was for them, for the money to actually stay in the bloodline, right? Sometimes there's daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws and other people involved. So their objective was to have that money go from the children down to the grandchildren. And it's great because you don't want to always have that discussion with your spouse. The children share that with the parents, and the parents are going to design their estate plan where it stays in trust to children, to grandchildren.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful discussion.
Starting early. Okay.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah.
So as people are walking away from this conversation, what do you really want them to take with them?
Estate planning is so much more than just money. It's about protecting yourself, your family, your friends, and your legacy. I think take action, right? If you don't do it, somebody's going to decide it for you. Going back to those core 4 documents, definitely get those core 4 documents. And then your estate plan's only as good to the extent somebody knows where to go, where to find it, who to talk to. So make sure that you're organized and somebody knows about it.
Get organized, get started, weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely.
Oh, Pamela, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Ally. It's great to be here.
If you're looking for more estate planning resources, check out our website, fidelity.com/money unscripted. And if this was a good conversation for you, share it with someone you care about. We'll see you next time on Money Unscripted. It's your life. Get your money's worth.